What is creative psychosis? The definition of psychosis, as put out by the establishment, the American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the institution, capital I, is the experience of being in a break from reality. Now, the APA and its many siblings have a vested interest in us living within the colonial reality, the constructed reality, the capitalist reality, a reality that is a collective psychosis that we have been forced into. I am going to provide a different definition of psychosis because reality is a construct. It is a tangible experience made real through action. Reality is what we make it. That is an expression that we have heard so many times it has lost its meaning, but it is a literal truth. Reality is what we make it. What we act into being then becomes the reality in which we live. And so when the APA and its sister organizations say that psychosis is a break from reality, this is an extremely political statement because the reality that they are talking about is the one that they are co-constructing, the one that they rely on to exist, which is the colonial, capitalist, white, extractive reality. The reality that we have all been forced to co-create through a generational conditioning of violence so that we are lending our energies, lending our life force, lending our actions into creating, into being a reality that not only does not serve us, but is seeking to destroy us and our planet. My definition of psychosis is a break from the truth. Capital T, truth. This colonial capitalist matrix, this system, this program, this machine is not truth. It is a constructed and fabricated reality that relies on us believing that we are dependent on it for our survival, when in fact, in truth, it depends on us for its survival. The first psychosis that we are all indoctrinated into, from which we must break, is this colonial psychosis. This break from the truth that we are co-creating with our actions, with the beliefs that have been forced onto us, that we are reliant on this system in order to survive. When we exit that colonial psychosis, as many of us have been, especially since October 7th, 2023, when the world saw the truth, capital T, truth about what was happening in Palestine, the truth about what this system is, always has been, always will be, which is a genocidal machine that requires our blood, our energy, in order to run us into the ground, keep us in a state of death and stagnancy, buried alive in our own lives. We enter into a secondary psychosis. The psychosis that I call the creative psychosis. Many of us have come to terms with leaving behind the colonial psychosis and now have opened themselves up to a world of possibilities. We have entered the void. Understanding that the colonial system is but one possibility, one reality that we have been forced into, that in fact was a false reality, was smoke and mirrors, was not what we had been, for many of us, led to believe, taught to believe. We now enter into a realm of creation. Well, I can bring in a new world. And when you invite that idea into yourself, that capital T truth to yourself, because you can create a new world, create a new way of being, you are supposed to. Without proper guidance and guardrails, you enter into the creative psychosis. The machine is very smart. It has one purpose and one purpose only: to keep us trapped in its version of reality, to serve its purposes, which is to extract our energy from us and extract energy from our planet. When the collective caught up to the colonial psychosis, the machine adapted to introduce a new form of psychosis that it has placed on the collective. A sort of spell it has all of us under. Its greatest fear is that we remember who we actually are, that we remember the power that we actually hold as creators of this physical reality. We decide what it is that we see in this world. We decide how our life is to go. We decide how the collective moves, because we are creators. We are members of this collective. We are the reality that we see before us. It is a reflection of us. The machine knows this, which is why it fights so hard to keep us trapped in our minds, to feed us its reality, its version of what is needed to be, of what it wants to see, its quote unquote truth, to keep us from the capital T truth, which is that we are the ones who are creating its reality into being. And so enter the creative psychosis. It is designed to keep us from acting within the capital T truth of what it is that we're here to create, which is genuinely whatever we want, which is a life outside of this extractive system, which is the life that we dream of, that we have seen since we were children. That world that you escape to when life gets to be too much, that is your life. That is the one you're meant to be living. Your fantasies, your imagination is a map. It is showing you your thread in the fabric of collective liberation. It is showing you your role to play in the creative collective, which is to say the collective that is in tune with creation, in tune with the universe, in tune with the natural order of life and things in the way they are supposed to go, which is not to be trapped and constricted by the realities that have been fed to us by a machine that wants to keep us dead, to extract our life force from us. Creative psychosis is the co-option of our exit from the colonial psychosis. It is the adaptation the machine has taken to correct for how much we now see of what it actually is on a large scale. And what it accomplishes is keeping us trapped in a loop that speaks slightly differently, looks slightly different, feels and seems and sounds slightly different from what we used to be before, but is in essence the same, because it is still a state of dependency on something outside of ourselves for our ability to survive, as opposed to our true and natural state of being, which is knowing that we have everything that we need within us. And that so long as we act on inspiration, so long as we create and trust in those creations, we will receive in turn everything that we need to live the life that is truly meant for us. And this is what I am here to help us break out of. My name is Phoenix Divine. My pronouns are he, they, it, she. I'm a trans artist, writer, musician who has spent a lifetime trapped in one form of psychosis or another, including the clinical, diagnosable, machine-approved form of psychosis. I was born in Los Angeles, California, to a wealthy family that has for many generations been trapped in cycles of extraction and sexual violence. We were the kind of family that to the outside looked pristine and perfect and loving, good Christians, and who on the inside were experiencing this emotional and spiritual rot that is so common to white families, so common within situations of wealth and excess. My childhood was one of torture and silence. I was taught that there was nothing for me to fear more than speaking the truth of what it was that I was experiencing within the home. That even more fearful than the rape and the sexual assault and the abuse was to speak up about those things to myself, to the family, and especially to others. What kept me alive growing up were my fantasies, was my imagination, was that thread that held me to the life that I'm actually meant to live, to the person that I have now become. It was the through line and the path that I walked. The thing that kept me going was these dreams that I had of playing shows, of writing, of painting, of drawing. And those skills, those talents, those innate desires that I had within me were not cultivated within me growing up. It is extremely difficult to exercise one's voice, to express yourself when you are in a situation like the one that I grew up in, of chronic extraction and silencing within severe punishment. While I always had that strength of spirit that I contain, while I always had that clarity of vision that is part of what makes me who I am, the fear and the programming and the conditioning that I was experiencing within how I was being raised took over. Because I am the creator of my reality, and the reality that was forced upon me, that had been forced upon my family for generations, was you cannot be loved, you cannot be taken care of, you cannot survive unless you are extracted from, followed me when I left the home. That was the belief that I held about myself. That was the reality that had been forced on me, and therefore the reality I was co-creating wherever I went. And so when I got to college, I was still experiencing rape and abuse and sexual assault on a basically chronic level. That experience of extraction is mirrored exactly within the system as it has been designed. There is a reason that the people who are the most spiritually connected gender oppressed people, trans people, feminine people, are the ones who experience the most extraordinary amount of sexual assault. The system has been designed to rape the life and rape the spiritual power out of all of us, because none of us escape sexual assault within the system, but especially out of those who are the most spiritually powerful, the most connected to the divine. What connects us to our divinity, which is our humanity, is our sexuality, our creativity, and our power. They exist all within the same energetic center. This system relies on us being spiritually disconnected. Even though we can't ever fully be spiritually disconnected, that is what it relies on, is our belief that we are not connected to the larger collective, to the universe, to the spiritual energy that we contain, to ourselves as creators. And the most effective way it can cut us off from that power is by destroying us sexually, destroying us creatively. That then destroys us from the place of our own personal power. Because I had been so conditioned in this way of being, when I got to college, was fading in and out of myself, the capital T truth of who I was as an artist, as a musician, as a writer, and coming very strongly into the colonial reality, what I had been created to be by my conditioning, by my upbringing, which was to be successful within the system. So go into corporate, make money, continue the loop of extraction. That part, that constructed reality that had been forced onto me, ultimately won out in my 20s. I went to law school. I became a corporate attorney at the top law firm in the country, some say in the world. I share this to illustrate just how far off the path that I meant to walk I was. I was in a deep pit of this colonial capitalist system. Within the colonial psychosis, I had become one of its greatest soldiers. I was co-creating the reality of the colonial capitalist system at the highest levels of corporate law. I was helping to write the magic, because words are spells, the magic that has us all under this collective psychosis of the colonial capitalist system. One in which, for example, corporations are people with rights. One in which profit is more important than the planet. One in which the most heinous, unethical, inhuman things can be done to entire communities, but are considered legal and therefore protected within the system because we are operating off of a logic as the machine has written it. I was so indoctrinated, so deeply embedded into the colonial psychosis that I was helping to write and reinforce the spell that has us all stuck in loops of extraction. I had a break from that experience. And I don't mean a rest, I mean I broke. The split within myself between who I really am, who I was forced to be and chose to be, became too severe. And under all of the stress that I was experiencing, my true self, my spirit, came forward screaming, "This is not who you are. This is not what you're meant to be doing. This is not the life you are supposed to be creating." And I listened to that voice. I started to hear it, and I listened, and I said, "Show me. Show me. Whatever it is that I am meant to do, I will do it. Help me get out of this hole." And that was enough of a door, just that little crack that I opened within myself. The universe responded in kind and blew me open. You're an artist. You're a writer. You're a musician. Had I practiced any one of these things in years? No, I had not. I wasn't even singing. It is very difficult to sing when you're spending your time working as a professional liar. That same clipping of expression of your voice that I had been programmed into as a child, experiencing the abuse that I was experiencing, being silenced, having to hold that abuse within myself for everyone around me, followed me into the law firm and was only exacerbated by what I was experiencing there. But I started to excavate myself. I started to unbury me, who I actually am, and I started to make different decisions. I started to act differently from how I had been acting throughout my adult life. I stopped following the rules of engagement of the system. I stopped following the rules of engagement of the pressures that I was experiencing from those around me. I started to break from that version of me that I had been forced to become. And me and that version of me, my programmed self, started to fight it out. And this is where I started to create. I was journaling first. And I remember taking those 10 minutes out of my day to journal 3 pages of longhand every morning. Felt like such a feat. It was such a battle for me, buried as I was within the beliefs of the system and of my program, to take those 10 minutes out of my day for myself to do something that seemed so inane, so not useful or productive or logical or rational within what I had been taught I was supposed to be doing. I was exiting the loop of extraction, which is one in which we reverse the wheel of how life is supposed to move. We decide what it is that we want. We seek it from outside of ourselves. We take the actions that we believe we need to take in order to attain or extract that thing from outside of ourselves. And we speak and appear however we need to speak and appear in order to receive that thing that we are after. That is the loop of extraction. That is how colonial capitalism works. That is how transaction works. That is how whiteness works. This is what we have been indoctrinated into being, the way that we've been indoctrinated into relating to each other under the colonial psychosis. The way that life is supposed to move is the opposite, is the creative loop. We receive inspiration, an idea, a possibility, a prayer called in by the collective. A prayer called in by something outside of ourselves. In appearance, but in truth, that rises up from within our spirit, which is connected to the collective spirit that we all share, rises into our mind, which is connected to the collective mind that we all share. Because yes, we are individual, we are separate, and in truth, we are all connected to each other in ways that our colonial psychosis does not allow us to acknowledge and honor. Once this inspiration rises into the mind, it is for us to then move it into the body and create with it. Move it from the realm of the cognitive into the physical world. Create something with it that we then share with the collective, that we then share with other people, one other person. Because the essence of what it is that we're here to do is connect. Creation moves through connection. And once we connect that creation that we have made from the inspiration that has risen from within us, that was granted to us, assigned to us to create with so that we can connect with who we are meant to connect with and who is meant to connect with us, we then receive from that inspiration, turn creation, turn connection, as others receive from us. This allows us the place to rest in the completion of a creative loop, which expands and spirals us out in our life into a more and more embodied version of who we're meant to be, into the experiences that are meant for us in this lifetime, into the lessons that we came to this earth to learn. It is an ever expansive loop that as we give and create, so much more is given and created back to us. It is a call and response with the universe that rises from the place of inspiration, of possibility, of imagination, not from extraction, not from the belief that I need something that exists outside of myself. No, from the knowledge that I have everything that I need so long as I am creating from my own inspiration, which requires me to act on that inspiration, to take the idea, the possibility, create it into reality, and then share it so that it can connect where it's meant to connect. And I receive that connection in turn so that all of us can then receive from that possibility. What I am here to do is help us move into that creative way of being, to exit the creative psychosis that seems different from the colonial psychosis, but is the same. It is an extension. It is the adaptation of the program, which has now caught up with the ways that we see through its previous version and has us all stuck in a same stagnant place where we have better language to describe what is going on, but we are still not taking action to overthrow this machine and the reality it has forced onto us as it is alive and existent within us. So long as the program is running unchecked within our own minds, it is created into reality with our bodies because we are acting on its beliefs. When it is created into reality through our bodies, it becomes a truth. It exists. It has form. It has essence and real world consequences. Horrific real world consequences. We are living through multiple concurrent genocides, ecocide, have been since the inception of this program, since the inception of this loop of extraction, and now we are seeing it in its end game. And we have the power to disrupt its purpose, which is to see us all extracted to nothing, to leave this planet in ash. We have the power and we have the responsibility to overthrow this programmed, extractive reality and to create the reality that is embedded and embodied within the capital T truth of creation.